My dad, you knew him as Jim, James Lensman Westerskov, was born January 10th, 1930, and he survived my mom and his wife Carol, and his brother Larry. And a lot of people, when he was sick, kept saying, was he in the military? He tried, but his heart failures and heart problems kicked him out. He managed, ran, and owned several businesses during his life, and you probably know him from some of those. His loves included people, animals, kids, travel, restaurants, westerns, cars, and ice cream. My sweet dad, Jim Westerskov, was so many things to so many people. He was the neighborhood dad, the business dad, the broad-shouldered dad, and the big-hearted dad. As the neighborhood dad, I remember all the kids who didn't have a dad around would flock to him when he was working in the garage or yard with Vin Scully on the radio, of course. Many people have told me they consider him, my dad, their grandfather or their uncle. So even though Dad didn't have a big family through DNA, he had a huge group of folks that loved him. As a kid, no matter where we went, someone would know my dad, usually from Hollydale Super Service. My dad was a local celebrity. He taught the entire neighborhood what it meant to be a good neighbor. He was friendly and offered tools and advice and help whenever he was asked or just when he thought maybe somebody needed it. He was a best friend to many, and some of you are in this room. He had non-judgmental listening, great support, and he was a really good friend to everyone who met him. Dad was also business dad. He gave many people their very first jobs or a job to tide them over during hard times. So many people learned a trade and got to be mentored by one of the greats. Dad was also a very smart businessman. When all the Westerskov boys got mechanic jobs, and it was my turn as the only Westerskov girl to get a job, he stuck me in the office because he knew that he didn't want anybody driving out of there with brakes that I'd repaired. Dad was very honest and honorable as a businessman. He never cheated anyone and always tried to do the right thing. One of the very best things he left behind for us is his example. So many of his former customers wrote to me on his 85th birthday and said that he did free repairs for their families when they were hard up, just saying, pay us when you can. He also would give jobs to people that were in between jobs and just try to make the neighborhood a great place. And I'm just wondering how many lives were touched by this generosity. And as many of you know firsthand, Dad could fix anything. One of his greatest joys was starting a handyman business with his best friend Gene Allen after he retired from the gas station. I also remember my dad as someone who persevered through challenges. This was my broad-shouldered dad. A quality I really admired about my dad was his ability to let the hard things go and move forward with a smile on his face. He didn't have the easiest life, but he carried no grudges and tried to get along with everybody, even me, who voted differently than him. He would listen to me rant, as Dick Hodson does, about my political viewpoints, and he would still give me a hug and a smile. Dad lost 2 wives and had to raise 2 teenage kids on his own. He lived with a myriad of health issues. When I was cleaning out Dad's things, I realized how many pain control creams and devices and ointments he had just to get through every day. He battled corporate lawyers. He lived with the repercussions of dealing with unscrupulous people. But if he struggled, he did not let it affect anyone around him. He always remained positive and full of love. This love is what I will remember most. This was my big-hearted dad. Dad was incredibly kind. He was an amazing father, and between he and my mom, Juanita, my brother and I were spoiled rotten, as Russ can attest to. I remember him helping me and my friends make our Halloween costumes. He drove us and any of our friends that needed a ride anywhere. Every winter, Mom and Dad would take the old brown station wagon and pile as many neighborhood kids as could fit and drive us all to the Hollywood Lane Parade. In college, sometimes I had commitments on the weekend, and my dad would be there at the gas station taking my bookkeeping shift at 4 in the morning for me. Dad was down to earth and unassuming with an easy smile for everyone. He continued to make wonderful new friends his whole life. His car friends enjoyed their Wednesday and Friday night car shows and camping trips, and he also loved animals. He was a kid and animal magnet. I guess they could sense his gentle nature. Dad took such pride in creating and maintaining his beautiful home. He loved traveling, seeing new places, making new friends, and really enjoyed his motorhome. He was an adventurous eater, and his favorite food was Mexican, and that's why we're treating you to tacos today. So when we're done, feel free to step out and enjoy some wonderful Mexican food. And Dad's smile. If you look at any photo, you will see his signature smile. From a big heart came a big smile. It's this warmth I will always feel and remember. Thank you, Dad, for being a kind and caring man, a fine father, and a friend to so many. Thank you for being here today.
For those of you that don't know me, my name is Russ Westerskov. Jim was my uncle. I have a brother who lives in Florida, a year younger than me. Some of the things as growing up, we was talking to a lady over here, talking about living next to the riverbed when you guys lived out there. And I was a little kid, I don't know, maybe 5, 6 years old, and we had a chicken farm. I don't know if your grandparents had had it or what it was. All I remember was your mom, my dad, and my uncle chasing down the chickens, whacking them. And my mom and Juanita were plucking them, and David and I, my brother, were just in awe. How can they do that? But as the years progressed, our whole family worked at the station. We're standing around a coffee pot, and my grandpa, who bought the station in 1953, my dad and my uncle took it over after he retired. We're all standing at the coffee pot. My grandpa, my uncle, my dad, myself, my brother, and Jimmy. And a salesman came up and says, "Can I speak to Mr. Westerskov?" And there was 5 of us, 6 of us standing. And we all kind of looked at each other and kind of laughed. But Jim he's an honest guy. I remember there was a guy on our, talking more about the station now, on the Century side. And we got really busy. And Jim saw this guy come up and get gas, got in his car and tore off, but had to stop at the signal. Jim went running across the islands and chased him down to get his $3. But Jim it was kind of fun working at the station with him, because he came from Advanced Muffler and came to work for my grandpa kind of as a favor, and then ended up, for the next 40 years between him and my dad. So Jim ran the front, and that's why we had such a good business. Jim was always giving service. We had customers from every part of the town. They would just come in. Jim would work on their car, like you said, he'd work on their car for free. You get the money, you pay me. And my dad was a little hard-nosed, so he ran the back, so he didn't see a lot of this that was going on. My dad kept saying, "You're giving too much stuff away. It's too much. They owe us money." So we'll get it in return. We'll get it in return. But it's one of the last houses in our family that it's an open door policy. You knock on the door, you open the door, and you walk in. You don't find that anymore. Well, no, let's call first. No. That's not how we do it. We just knock on the door. If they're home, we walk in, have a cup of coffee. So in the later years, I swing by there, I give Jim a call, says, "Hey, you want to go to lunch?" He says, "Yeah, where do you want to go?" "I don't care." "How about Casa Camino?" "Oh, okay, yeah, let's go there." But that was his favorite restaurant. So I snuck up on him one time when Gene and Jim were working. I stopped by Gene and Charlene's house to get a cup of coffee. She says, "They're not here, they're out working." I said, "Well, what's the address? I'll sneak up on him." If anybody knows Gene, his eyesight was really, really poor at the end. So I walk in, and Jim is painting the walls, and Gene is up on a ladder that far away from a piece of crown molding, cutting in a straight line. And I kind of laughed at him, and he just chuckled back. You know, they had a good time working together. Christmas is at Grandma's house.
Oh.
It's Danish tradition. You know, it was the whole family showed up. We had our dinners, we did our open our presents, we sang Christmas carols. Gene and Charlene and the kids, they'd come by, and it's just a nice family time over the holidays. And if I could say anything between the kids and parents, you got to take care of one another. You know, the traditions are gone. So the parents need to keep an eye on your kids, and the kids need to appreciate their parents. It's a thing that's kind of going away. But you know, that's all I have. If anyone else would like to say anything, you know, feel free to come on up.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Ken Razor, and Vicki and I met nearly 40 years ago, which is so scary to say out loud. I was on the fringes of radio, and she was working at the Queen Mary, and which is actually where we met. I was living in Hollywood at the time, which meant I was the boyfriend from out of town. So if you're a dad and you have a daughter, there's only one solution for that. It's a shotgun. And I don't even own guns. I have a daughter, but I know what that feeling is like. But that wasn't Jim. Vicki said so much about what Jim was like, and she actually said a word that has been ringing in my mind since I heard about this memorial: kind. And that was Jim. You know, we live in this massive place, Greater Los Angeles, nearly 100 miles wide. It's endless urban sprawl. But there are these little places carved out, you know, between rivers and freeways and railroad tracks. And certainly Hollydale was a place like that. Well, Hollydale, I mean, what the name says it all. I mean, it just screams the 50s. And there was Jim and Larry and the Texaco station that certainly could have been a location for Back to the Future. And there was Jim. And the funny thing about getting up and having recollections, and there are people here, I'm sure, who have many more better stories than I could think of. But the thing about Jim is, usually at moments like this, the point is to get up and tell some kind of story that you know that reveals the inner person, that hidden part of the guy that you didn't know. That was not Jim Westerskov. If you met him one time, you liked him. If you got to know him a little bit, you fell in love with the guy. He was warm, he was welcoming, he was opening, and he was kind to everybody. And that's what I experienced. And it's so striking because Jim was better, I think, than most of us. Because a lot of times I think we're worried and work very hard at being right, and I think Jim had it right, and that was just the kindness that just fell out of him always. And he was a dear, sweet, wonderful man, and I was fortunate to know him, and I appreciate that.
My name's Mike Gore, and I had the privilege of living next door to the Westerskov. From the time we moved in, it was like 1969. 69, yeah. We moved in 67. and they moved in. You guys used to live out in the back in Hollydale, out there by the riverbed there. And so Jim and Juanita, I used to call them Mr. and Mrs. W because, you know, I was so young I'd screw that name up all the time. So, but living right next door, as Vicki said, they would load up the neighborhood kids, and I would be one of them. I'd be right there in the back of that station wagon. We'd go places, and we had a lot of fun times. I mean, Jim was a very generous and loving guy. You explained it all. He asked me one time if I wanted to work at his gas station. Well, let me back out first. When I was in high school and I wanted to go to the prom, I didn't have any money, right? So Jim and Juanita's the one, Mrs. W, she says, well, come over here, Mike. And backside of their house had some plants, and she says, clean this up. And I said, okay. I didn't understand what clean it up, so I dug them all out. And I don't think I was supposed to do that, but she paid me anyway. I think she paid me like $10 or $12, which at that time, you know, was a lot of money. I mean, minimum wage at that time was $1.75 or $1.25 or something. So they were more than generous and helped me out. And then later on, Jim asked me to work at the garage. I was part of the super service. Go out there and clean the windows and check the tires and check the oil. I mean, that was back when you got all that, you know, and you did it with a smile. And so I knew Russ. I haven't seen him in many years. How you been? Good. And Jimmy and I used to go out there in the riverbed, and because we were small kids together, and you know, go out there. And I remember when it was raining one time, and you know, everybody says, "Don't go down there." But we're down there swimming in that darn thing. You did all the things you weren't supposed to do. But Jim was a kind man. In fact, my mom lived there next door to Jim up until like 4 years ago, I think. Wow. And we tried to get her to move because the house got broken into 4 or 5 times. And she says, no, it's okay. I have Jim next door. Jim's taking care of me. And I said, okay, you know, because I ended up moving to Orange County, then to San Diego. My brother moved to Oxnard. And it's far for us to get back. And so finally, after the fifth time, I think, she said, okay. So she moved up next to my brother, but left Jim there and tried to make it a point that every time I went to visit my mom, she would say, okay, because I was coming right back by. She says, you got to stop and see Jim. Say hello. He's not doing real well. So I kind of regret, because 6-8 months ago, I didn't do it. I went up there in January or February, I think, and I didn't stop. The last time I saw him was last year. So, but he'd give you the shirt off his back and help you with anything you had to do. All the neighbors. I mean, he was still, even as the neighborhood changed and evolved, he was still doing things and helping people. You know, he was an anchor in that neighborhood. He brought people together, and he was a great man. And I miss him. So that's about it. That's my story.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Albert.
Good morning.
5 years ago, it wasn't 4, it was 5 for Mike. Where's Mike? I don't see him.
I don't know where he's at.
Was 5 years ago, we moved in next door to Jim. We bought their house, Mitzi's house. What can I say? That man was a great man. He was like, at the end, he was like my best friend. Ever since we moved in, we just clicked really fast. I'm shaking because it's unbelievable he's not here. But I have a lot of stories to tell. My family we spend a lot of time together, a lot of time. He been left, like I own my own business. He even would leave with me to go work. He will just, if I needed a carpool partner, he would say, hey, just pick me up, buy me food, and just take me. I'll just sit next to you, but just make sure if I need to stop to the restroom, take me to the restroom. And but since day one, we moved in, we got the house. We got Mitzi's house, we got it. Since the second day we moved in, they cut the light, and the guys were working in there. And I hadn't even met Jim, and he would just go see, because I was all over the place. And the guys were working in the house, and he gave him, like I said, somebody said he was a great neighbor. He was a great neighbor. Without even knowing me, he went and gave the guy to a court so they could, keep on working. And then the guys went and told me, so I went to go see him and thank him for the light. And from there on, we just clicked, and every day he would be there. And there was times I couldn't be there. He got my cell phone, he would call me and say, the guys are doing this, the guys are taking too long on the break. You want me to push it? He was always giving me info. And then the guys towards the end, he was like, he was our manager. He would come and tell us, since he knew a lot about, construction, tell us a lot about things. And but it just breaks my heart that when we moved in there, my wife was pregnant. So my daughter, which is there right now, both of them towards the end, like they were really, really close to each other. At one point, it was really hard because my daughter she started to walk, and Jim was having trouble already walking, and it was the funniest thing and the most loving thing that my daughter was starting to walk, and Jim was having trouble with his cane. And at one point, they were holding each other's hand. And I think we took a picture because he was on his wall holding each other's hand, and she was just one trying to walk. And then he got tired, and he just sat down, and she sat down next to him, and they were just there for hours. And my daughter, Sophia, she's always been a little wild one. She would leave. Because Jim will always have food. She would leave to go eat with them, and they will have picnics in the back without even us knowing. They would, their thing was always crackers and peanut butter. The thing was that Sophia was always smarter. She would eat 4 crackers, Jim would eat 1. But Jim was so loving and caring, and we miss him so much. At one point, too, I would tell my wife, I'm kind of getting mad at Jim. I would get home, and Jim was in my house. I would get home from work, Jim was in my house. He changed us so much. He changed me so much. He changed my wife so much that even her cooking, Jim, for after I became so good friends, that Jim would be in our house for dinner every day. Every day he would be there until he landed in the hospital, and then we found out his salt sugar had gone up, or what was it?
Yeah, the salt.
And then he blamed us. He was like, "It's you guys. It's all the Mexican food I'm eating for you guys." And then it was so funny because after he got out, like 2 weeks after, the first thing he went and did, he came over. When he came out the house, he came over. But then the second week, he came and brought my wife a present, and it was so funny because she opened up the present, and it was how to cook with no salt. So he wasn't trying to leave our house. He was still trying to be in our house, but she wanted her to change her cooking skills, which she did. Which he was such a great person. He went and bought all Mrs. Dash stuff. He said, just cook for me with all low salt. And I would get home, and because we're Hispanic, we're Mexican, and everything we eat with spicy food. She even changed all that, and I would be like, why are you changing the food? Jim's coming over. Or she would make 2 separate dinners, one for me and one for Jim. And he just changed our lives, and he was just a great person. Overall, like I said, he always treated me and my kids, my kids. When we moved in there, a lot of our neighbors, especially, they were like, oh, how you guys are getting along with Jim? Jim is always, he was always so reserved towards the end. He said, you guys lighting him up. I was like, it's not me, it's just the kids. He loved the kids. The kids will wait for him. Jim will always go buy the ice cream. He will eat a scoop or 2, and then the kids will wait for him because he will feel guilty he was eating his ice cream. He will go and take the ice cream to the kids. We also had a tradition. The first year we moved in, every year Christmas he would he will be the one that he will put a Christmas star, and I don't know what we're gonna do this year. When Christmas comes around, because he's not gonna be here, but that's all I have to say.